independent school posting a really incredible pass rates across the board. The IEC examinations have received a 98.3%. That's the overall pass rate. So let's explore this issue further. And it's really about the publishing of these results. You remember the court case on the eve of the release of these results about whether or not the results for the public schools tomorrow should be published. Allison Tilley is a member of the Information Regulator, and of course they're speaking to matrics, particularly on this issue. Allison, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So the Information Regulator, of course, was it came on this debate before it even ended up in court in terms of what the POPI Act actually requires of the department. So in as far as the outcomes of the case, were you surprised by how the court found?
No, but that's primarily because there was only the application before the court. So the Department of Basic Education and Information Regulator didn't oppose the order. So the order was granted to Afriforum as they asked for it.
Let's talk a little bit then about the recourse, because we know not everybody is happy about this decision. What recourse do parents and learners still have right now?
Well, the theory is, and that the plan is, that the information of learners is de-identified. So results are published only with the learner's number, their exam number. If for any reason their personal information is disclosed and they want to raise that with the regulator, they would certainly be able to do so.
And in as far as making those processes accessible to people, what is the line of course or the channel that they'll need to follow?
Well, it's reasonably straightforward. If you process information and it's not personal information, so it's your number or your some identifier, which is a string of letters and numbers, say, and you publish that information, that's not personal information as defined in the Act. So you don't theoretically have a problem if you publish that kind of information. It's the sort of thing that researchers use when they do research in medical issues around health. The processing, there's really only a small group of people who know what the number is and the name is, and that connecting the two. So that's how these kinds of processing should work.
So under which circumstances, and I know it would be perhaps a bit difficult for you to give me a practical example of a case where somebody would have a leg to stand on if they wanted to contest this?
Well, there's all sorts of mistakes that can happen. So, for example, somebody takes a list of exam numbers with the learners' names and they put it up on a notice board. And everybody in the school is then able to see what people's exam numbers are. Somebody takes a photograph of that, starts circulating, and the next thing you know, everybody knows who got what results, and then somebody puts up a list of people's names with their results. I mean, that's not something that would be planned, but, you know, it's not impossible that this happens. This is the whole difficulty with information in an information age, is that it's really slippery and it moves really quickly. And that's the sort of thing that would be definitely a POPI violation.
Allison, you know, one certainly got a sense from the Department of Education that even though they had taken the decision to not publish these results, there seemed to be a level of uncertainty about what the limitations of the POPI Act actually are. How long do you think it's going to take South African institutions, and I think it's not just limited to the public sector, but across the board, to get to full grips with how this Act is meant to work and what it's intended to do?
Look, it's a complicated piece of legislation in some ways. It's long, it's got lots of sections and subsections. Essentially, the only things that people really have to think about is how they gather information, what they do with it when they have it, and when they don't need it anymore, they need to destroy it. So if you get those things right, you're probably fine. For a lot of people, it's just really thinking about what personal information that you have and how you got it, and thinking about it responsibly from there. So in some ways it does seem very technical, but I think there are ways to think about it that make it perhaps easier to understand.
If matric learners, you know, as they take on the school year, are given some form of indemnity forms or, you know, forms basically giving permission for the publishing of their results, does that make the debate that we've had in the last couple of weeks easier?
Well, it does and it doesn't. It depends. That's a good lawyer's answer. The difficulty is that it's not only consent. So you have to process lawfully. So even if somebody gives you their consent, you can't just get their consent to do anything you want with that information. So I think consent is perhaps not the open sesame that people think it is. But there's other policy issues, as I understand it, and I'm not an educator, which are around how you make results public and in what way, and you want to think about learners and their mental health. So there are all sorts of issues that are completely aside from the POPI issues, and those are the sorts of things that you probably want to think about and consult on and discuss, and then, you know, formulate a policy on. I think just looking at POPI is probably not the right approach.
Allison, we'll leave it there for today. Allison Tilley is a member of the Information Regulator.